Okay, I want to bring in Keith Murray. He's our forensic expert. He's joining us from New York as well. Keith, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think this information, particularly regarding the odor in the car, is something that the judge would permit? I mean, typically, is this evidence that's permitted in trials?
I think it's the difference between the scientific testimony and the opinion testimony. I mean, certainly a police officer can get up there and say, it smelled to me like a dead body. If the police officer has experience, if the police officer has smelled a dead body before, the question is really getting in about the scientific analysis and whether or not this sampling of the constituent molecules of what's in there and their relation to decompositional odor. And we just heard Dr. Furton say this isn't generally accepted yet in the scientific community, and that gets right to the heart of what these hearings are about.
Now, Dr. Vass, the doctor who came out and said, I smelled what was in this car based on a carpet sample and based on the scientific evidence that they had practiced, there was, according to Dr. Vass, 10,000 times the normal levels of chloroform in that car. How can the defense explain that away? What might that be?
Yeah, I think what they're getting at, and you know, while Gene beat me to it, but while the mother was testifying this morning and said that she had sprayed an entire bottle of Febreze in the car, a lot of these household cleaners have similar chemical compounds that are forensically identifiable. They're going to enhance, they're going to mask. You have to be very careful when identifying these things. So when they tested for the presence of chloroform, they may find chloroform, but they don't know the mechanism by which the chloroform got in the car. It could have been a pool towel with chlorinated water. It could have been chlorinated drinking water, if that's what they have down in Florida. So I think we're going to hear testimony at some point. I would not be surprised if we did, that you can test Febreze and find high concentrations of chloroform present in that testing. So the defense is going to get at, well, it's there because the mother sprayed an entire bottle of Febreze in the car, and that's why they peak so high.
But then how do they reconcile the fact that, I mean, one of the big things I think that's come out this morning is that Cindy Anthony during cross said during apparently a 2009 deposition that she never put dryer sheets in the car, so she doesn't know how they got in there. But then now she's sitting on the stand, of course, and everybody knows, look, it was a very traumatic time for her. But that seemed to be a pretty big discrepancy that the prosecution highlighted today.
Sure, and it's the difference between the dryer sheets, which I don't know if they would test positive for chloroform. I think, you know, in trapping odors, there might be some present there. But she also said that she's been on antidepressant medication and other medications, so, you know, her testimony might be a little conflicted. Her memory might be a little off because she was under the influence of medication at the time, and nobody bothered to ask her that in the original testimony.
Okay. When we look at all of this evidence that the defense is trying to exclude, is there any of it that you see that is just too sketchy to allow?
There's a few things here that I think, particularly with Dr. Vass, I think as the forensic science geek in me loves the fact that he is developing this device that can scan for human remains and sample the air. He's trying to develop this handheld device. I think the science at this point is too early. You know, he's only tested it on a sampling of, I think, 12 human bodies over the last 10 years. He's never done any kind of testing that has the same environmental conditions as the testing in this case, you know, the body in the trunk of a car. I certainly appreciate the scientific validity and what it can do for the forensic science community, but I think it's just a little too early to be putting it into court.
Which evidence do you think should be admitted? What's valid in your opinion?
I think all of the scientific use of the gas chromatography, mass spectometry, is certainly valid. That's been around for 60 years.
And explain to people what that is, because what does that mean?
It's a method of sampling. It's a method of taking a sample, an unknown sample, subjecting it, breaking it down to its consistency. The scientific terminology is tough to get.
I know. Thank you for clarifying.
Breaking it down to its constituent molecules, and then detecting what those molecules are, so you can see what the chemical breakdown of a substance is, and therefore identify it. Okay. That's been around for decades. It's used in arson investigations, drug investigations. It's used in identifying explosives residue. It has all kinds of industrial chemical applications. There's no question it's valid. The question is the opinions that are being derived based on that.
From it. Okay, I gotcha. Keith, thank you so much. Keith Murray breaking it down for us there. Let's get you back to court. The judge.
Just reach into your back pocket. I'll tell you, it's like a teacher dealing with school children, and I want to bring in Keith Murray on this. Keith Murray, when you heard that, were you surprised at all? Does it cross the line, or is Judge Belvin Perry doing whatever he can to get order in that courtroom?
No, I was cracking up when he said that. I mean, his delivery for one, and the sanction. It's not something you see often. I clerked for a judge for 3.5 years, Judge Blue in New Haven, who's doing the Cheshire home invasion cases. And I think in that entire 3.5 years, once an attorney either got snarky or he was late or something like that, and the judge had him pay a $50 fine to a local charity. Usually that's where that money goes. It's a slap on the wrist to the lawyer. The amount is usually kind of superficial. I mean, $100 is not huge to these guys probably, and it's likely going to go to a local charity or some judicial fund of some kind.
I got to think it's not small for the defense, because remember, the state's paying for a lot of their case. We don't even know if the lawyers are getting paid a lot in this case, so it's no small matter, and the judge is serious. And Mike Brooks, I got to ask you about this, and you get the sense that the trust is breaking down between the two sides, because when you work on a trial like this, look, you depend on the other side, sure. Keith Murray, to provide what you expect, what you agree to. And it comes down to even what Judge Belvin Perry mentioned about little things, like what he called the subtleties of trial practice, making copies for the other side so everybody's working off the same document. That's standard, right?
It's a courtesy, of course. It's a courtesy. It's expected. I would think at this point that the state would have copies of any of these reports. They may have them in a trial binder somewhere. They might not have them right in front of them. But it's always a courtesy. I mean, you always give the court a copy of something you're submitting or something you're reading off of for testimony.
Yeah.